Well, thank you again for the preview of what's to come. That's terribly exciting. I can't wait to learn more. So that was a perfect segue to what we're going to talk about next. And as you've heard through the first, throughout the introduction of Fast Forward and also the reference to the climate project that's coming, is MIT is deeply committed to decarbonization. And when we address decarbonization, we're really addressing it as a model for, can somebody grab me the clicker here? I think maybe Tom, if you bring that up. You know, we really think of the way in which we're decarbonizing the campus is a model for the world, right? We have an amazing team working on this today. So, when MIT came out with the Fast Forward plan in 2021 already, at that stage, it really laid the foundation for what you heard from Richard today, which is MIT is committed to going this time as far as we can, as fast as we can, with the tools that we have now, invest in and invent and develop new suites of tools, and educate and empower the next generation. And as you heard from what Richard just said with the climate project, we're going even bigger and creating the scaffolding and the structures to do that more rapidly and with greater breadth. So embedded and headlining that initial project around campus impact commitments is our goal to reduce emissions in the world and on campus. So we committed to net zero by 2026 as outlined here, which assumes that we will continue to reduce emissions on campus in the near term, yet seek to reduce emissions at the grid level via large power purchase agreements. You'll hear more about that later. And what we're going to focus on today is the 2050 goal, which calls for major investments in the campus to reduce demand and determine how to provide electricity, heating, and cooling to our campus with zero emissions. And again, this fits exactly the foundation of the climate project as well. We believe we should be leading on this front, and that's also just been reinforced given MIT's mission to solve global challenges in climate at the world, and indeed our ability to use our exceptional research and resource capacity in the services of this mission. This is MIT's all-in moment, and it's even more of an all-in moment as of today. And today, what you're going to hear about, for those who aren't familiar with this yet, is you're going to hear from Joe and Vasso in a moment, who will be providing you with an update on our process to decarbonize the campus, how we're tapping our internal expertise to decarbonize the world at the local level, and our interest to learn about the type of relevant research some of you may be involved with that we're not even aware of, who are in attendance today. We're going to following Steve and Vasso, we're going to hear from Steve and Chenhan with support from Professor Shiki Zhang, who will provide us insight to how the research streams that you'll soon learn about are working and demonstrating the value of this academic staff teamwork that we've launched. So I'd like to turn over to Joe Higgins, VP of Campus Services and Stewardship, followed by our colleague Vasso Mathis, Senior Planner with Office of Campus Planning. There you are, Joe. All right, thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Julie. And wow, thank you, Richard, for that tremendous preview today. I mean, what a great moment that we're able to hear this all firsthand, because you're all the folks that, provide all the power and energy to make that plan happen. And thank you, Nina, for those amazing words at the very beginning. Thank you. And I say thank you all for, this opportunity to engage with you around, efforts to decarbonize the campus. So as Richard said, we all know that, a third of MIT's faculty and researchers, and many of you are here today, are working to identify ways in which MIT can amplify its contributions to addressing the world's climate crisis. But part and parcel to that goal is, as Julie said, we're putting significant effort into decarbonizing MIT's own carbon footprint here on our campus. And many of you here today are working towards just that. I'd say at least probably 20% of the folks in the room here. If you just raise your hand, those that are working on any aspect of decarbonizing our campus. Great. So this effort is guided by three things, is what we're learning. One, it's guided by the trajectory of the technology that we can apply to our campus to be zero emissions. The anticipated evolution of the power grid. How quickly can we decarbonize the power grid? Because today the grid is only, 10 to 15% green. There's some offshore wind coming and some other projects, but the pace of that has to increase very quickly. And also the nature of emerging regulatory frameworks mandating decarbonization in Boston and Cambridge, and we're going to hear a little bit about that later today. So I thought what I would do is share with you today a summary that we provided for MIT's leadership, our executive committee, and our corporation members this past December to update them on some of the work that all of you are doing, where we're at today, decarbonizing the campus, and the planning process that we have in place to figure out what are the pathways to get us to zero emissions by 2050. So we start with a little bit of history. So in 1916, when the MIT campus came across the river here, it was powered by a centralized utility plant for all of its heating and electricity, and you can see that in the bottom left-hand corner here. So that used to be sort of the backyard of the campus, but now it's really the center of the campus, that the whole campus has grown up over the last 100 years. But the sort of founding members of MIT said, the district energy approach was the way that MIT wanted to approach an expanding campus. There was a lot of incredible benefits for having all of that generation in one place. But what it has allowed us to do is progressively switch to cleaner fuel sources over the years very quickly as they become available. So rather than having to do it building by building basis, you could do it in one fell swoop, in one location. So starting with coal as the primary energy source, MIT transitioned to fuel oil, and then to natural gas, and then to latest generations of cogeneration technology when they became available. And with each step, the campus became less carbon intensive. And going forward, we're following sort of that trajectory, and we're buckled up to continue along the path, ultimately getting us to zero campus emissions by 2050. So where do MIT's direct emissions come from, and how can we reduce them? So when you look at where they come from, more than half of our direct emissions come from the fossil fuels that we use, either purchasing electricity from the grid or making our own electricity to power our campus. 40% is from the fossil fuels that we use to make heating and hot water for our campus. A majority of that heating goes into the ventilation systems that keep our laboratory buildings safe. And then the remaining 5% is used to run our fleet vehicles here on campus. So to reduce those emissions, the actions that all of us are taking, we really kind of think of it in these three buckets. So the first is we need to reduce the emissions that are involved in generating energy for our campus. The second is to minimize the leakage in our district energy systems as we distribute energy around the campus. So we distribute our electricity in our own wires, heating in our own pipes, and air conditioning in our own piping networks as well. And plain and simply, the third bucket is we just need to use less energy in all of our buildings. So we thought we'd take a close look at those three areas and some of the actions that all of you are taking to reduce those emissions. So we'll start first at the heart of the district energy systems in the generation bucket. So we're currently taking advantage of the next generation of cogen technology in MIT Central Utilities plant. So this went live 2 years ago. It helps us make electricity, heating, and air conditioning for more than 100 buildings on our campus. The high operating efficiencies of this process produces power for the campus up to 15 to 20% less carbon intensive than the grid supplies it from the regional grid today. We also have the ability, the way that it's set up is we can export power to the regional grid when the grid is most stressed, typically during the peak heating season and the peak cooling season. And this contributes to the overall resiliency of the local energy systems here in Cambridge. And then when the grid eventually becomes cleaner, we do have the flexibility to import 100% of the electricity to our campus from the local power grid through our own microgrid. So we have these switches that can seamlessly switch between buying it and making it based upon the cleanest energy sources available. So following along the theme of generation, MIT is also spurring the creation of large-scale renewable energy projects. And MIT is playing the leading role, and many of you in the room here today to make these possible, to enable the construction of very large solar and wind projects, getting them off the ground by committing to purchasing and reselling the electricity that they create. And we're doing this with a number of very large partners here in Boston and Cambridge. And these projects have a very immediate and significant impact in the urgent need for decarbonization of these regional power grids. We ultimately need something green to plug into, and this is a way that MIT can contribute to these types of projects. These projects also play an important role in MIT getting to their net zero goal. And basically what we've done is we incorporated what we've learned from Summit Farms, and you've heard about this, we've been talking about this in Sustainability Connect for many years. So MIT joined 2 local partners that enabled the development of a solar farm that's 4 times the size of MIT's campus. It's 3 miles long. What we learned is the immediate impact that had is the early retirement of a regional coal-fired power plant, which actually paid us to retire and come offline early by virtue of us committing our capacity to the local grid. So we've been encouraged to go even bigger. So the 2 projects that you see on the right there, each of them are 200 megawatts. There'll be an announcement coming out on this in the next, I'd say, probably month or 2. But this is a landmark collaboration. So this isn't 2 partners. This is over a dozen partners here. Very recognized names. It's not-profit, healthcare, higher ed, municipal organizations. It's a really, really, really big deal. And just to give you a sense of the size of these projects, if you add them up, it's 500 it's almost close to 500 megawatts. So MIT's kind of campus load on our peak day is about 40 megawatts. So it's really over 10 times the size of the power demand of MIT on its campus. So one thing that we've learned is that these collaborations have a ripple effect. And the ripple effect is it's a model now that smaller organizations and government agencies can follow, and it allows them to achieve reductions in carbon emissions at a much faster and bigger scale than they could do on their own. So hearing more about that in the press in the coming months. So here on our campus, with regard to renewable energy, we're installing more photovoltaic energy systems on our rooftops. So we have several photovoltaic systems today, but there are several new installations in progress on the roofs in our residential, academic, and student life buildings, such as the new Vasso undergraduate residence. Grad Junction is the new graduate dorm out on our West Campus, and the Theater Arts building on Vassar Street. So future installations will soon follow these. One on the renovated East Campus parallel dorms, Johnson Athletic Center, the Z Center, and Ashdown House. And MIT is also part and parcel to enabling some community solar farms here in Massachusetts. So we have a large one in Middleton, and another one, a large community solar project where MIT is 50% partner in enabling these projects in Cape Cod, which is Cape Cod's first and largest low-income housing project, where they didn't really have a project like that before. So we're looking forward to announcing that project as well. So great efforts on that front. So now turning from generation to distribution, we're in the process of converting our legacy steam distribution systems to a much more efficient hot water distribution system. We call it medium temperature hot water. So this is a system that is much more efficient, it uses less energy, and it reduces maintenance costs. So the founding steam systems across our campus put a lot of wear and tear on the campus. We're always chasing steam leaks from corrosion and constantly fixing them. So these new hot water distribution systems, as you see here on the right, definitely low maintenance and much more efficient, and they don't leak as much. So we recently completed the conversion of the steam systems on this part of the campus here. So all of the Sloan area was converted to hot water over the last couple of years. There was also a new hot water node created on Vassar Street. So that was built for the College of Computing with the flexibility to extend that system into the heart of campus to some of our core research buildings. So this transition to hot water gives us what we call as the most flexible backbone for efficiency in the future district energy systems that we're going to add to the campus in terms of how we move thermal energy around the campus. We're also making steady progress on how we use energy in our buildings. So as you know, we strive for high sustainability standards in our construction and renovation projects. Today we have over 25 LEED certified projects for that's, the U.S. Green Building Council certification for energy efficiency and environmental standards. And these are just 2 examples we shared of high performance design. One was relevant, the College of Computing, featuring a double skin facade that was constructed from state-of-the-art interlocking glass. This provided a very significant thermal buffer, so reducing requirements for heating and cooling. And then the renovation of our Met Warehouse, which is soon to be home for the School of Architecture and Planning, will be all electrified. So this will be MIT's first all electrified building. And we're using industrial scale heat pumps as its main heating and supplemental cooling source. So we're looking forward to that project opening up at the end of 2025, early 2026. And also in terms of end use, as you know, MIT is home to many high energy intensity research buildings. And 20 of these research buildings out of our 168 buildings consume more than half of our total energy use here on campus. So we are hyper-focused on those, and we have teams just dedicated towards optimizing the efficiency of these buildings using strategies like recalibrating room-by-room ventilation rates, converting fume hoods from constant volume to variable volume, and also censoring the building systems so that they run more effectively. And we're also using artificial intelligence, and this was born from a pilot program in Building 66 to further optimize energy use in classrooms and offices. And this is something that allows us to continually reset the set points in our spaces based upon future weather forecasts, occupancy trends, schedules, forecasted carbon intensity of the grid, et cetera. And this AI effort was one of the news articles that Julie highlighted, led by a team of faculty members from the College of Computing and DUSP and some of our folks from our facilities management team. So the goal is to scale this AI application to thousands of thermostats campus-wide, with the next phase of the rollout being some of the major classrooms. And then for our fleet, we're also converting our campus shuttles and vehicles to electric. This is all subject to availability. We're trialing some new electric vehicles over this past month. We got some new ones on campus. And in addition, we're increasing the number of car charging stations on our campus as the demand evolves. So to recap, how are we going to get to this 2050 goal? So the way that we think about it is it's two parts. The first is enabling large-scale renewable energy projects. That's something that we can do immediately, and it has an impact much greater than even the MIT's campus. In parallel, we're also developing many projects to dramatically reduce energy in our highest energy using buildings. So there's teams out there actively reducing that. And one of the things that you could actually see that the payoffs and benefits in this past year as we went to create our budget for next fiscal year, we're adding new buildings and new loads to the campus, but we're not increasing our energy budget. So a lot of these energy efficiency projects that many of you are working on are very significant, and it keeps our, we're reducing energy even despite all the significant increases in the loads that we're adding to the campus. So in addition, in parallel, we're also developing the infrastructure plan that Vasso is going to come talk to us a little about how we're doing that to get us the rest of the way to zero carbon emissions. And that's really thinking about how we're going to adapt to an increasingly greener energy grid locally and how we can plug into that. But ultimately, that's going to be undergirded by the resilience that we need to bake into the system and how we're going to rely on this greening energy source. So I just wanted to take 1 second just to give you an overview. Vasso will give us a much deeper dive on this. So once a greener grid is ultimately available to us, it will fully power our campus. It will keep the lights on. It'll air condition our campus. But what our core challenge is how do you use a green energy source to help generate heat for our campus? And I mean the intense heat for the ventilation systems that we have for our research buildings without fossil fuels. So that's the challenge, the core challenge that the team is looking into. And some of the emerging technologies we're exploring, you can see here, are the industrial scale heat pumps, heat recovery, electric chillers, some geothermal applications. There's a whole range of those we're looking at for our campus, microreactors, and also bio-based fuels. And as we work to incorporate some of these new technologies into our district energy systems, it's very important that we maintain reliable and resilient sources of power for our campus. So our district energy systems, or our microgrid, is an incredibly valuable asset to us today and will continue to be in the future, because it can continue to operate in the absence of any external power from the power grid. It'll continue to protect our campus from energy supply disruptions, outages caused by weather events, and an increasingly destabilized energy grid as we kind of work through that. So this is a core strength for MIT right now as our district energy systems will continue to evolve. And lastly, as Richard said, we have to adjust and we have to live with climate change to some extent. So we're also working towards a weather resilient MIT. And there's a group of you out there, contributing to this. So as we know, the campus is increasingly at risk from intense rainfall events such as flash floods, tropical storms, hurricanes, nor'easters. So we have these campus flood models that have been developed by the teams right here with us today that are used for decision making. And the decision making is around campus planning, our operations, how we prepare for these storms. It also informs all the designs of our new construction and renovation projects. So this resilience committee, many of you are here today, is also evaluating our existing building systems and locations that are most vulnerable to flooding. And they're developing some targeted mitigation strategies to invest in those buildings over time. So with that, I'd like to now hand it over to Vasso to come up and tell us a little bit about the process of how we're going to get our campus to zero emissions by 2050.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Julie. Thank you to everyone today. I am here to talk to you about a planning project that MIT has started. We started this process April of 2023, and it's about an 18-month-long study that we're doing. And we're focusing our work on making our district energy system here at MIT carbon-free to 2020. And what we've established, I did. Sorry, I don't know how to do this back. Okay. We've broken up the planning work into 3 phases. We spent the summer, we hired a consultant. We spent the summer exchanging a large amount of data and information about our district energy system with our design consultant to really look at where we are today. And the consultants are working on building a robust model that looks at our existing needs and our existing delivery and give us an opportunity to really analyze how we generate and distribute heating, cooling, and electricity to our campus. Then we went into a study phase where we looked at opportunities within our existing buildings to reduce energy. So we produced some energy audits in our high energy properties that we have on campus. And the consultant is evaluating those energy conservation measures that we could do to reduce not just the buildings that we studied, but across the entire campus, ways that we can reduce the demand on the central utilities plant. So we're evaluating those opportunities now, and all of these efforts are to develop a campus decarbonization plan. And that's where we are right now. So we are looking and examining emerging technologies that Joe just mentioned to you. We're also evaluating all of what's available today and what could be available in the future based on an MIT-specific criteria. And the goal is to present some pathways to MIT leadership working, and I'll explain on the next slide, how MIT can do this. So developing a framework and developing a pathway to get us from today to the next 20 years. So we've structured ourselves, this is a slide that just talks about how we're going about doing this really huge task that we have in front of us. And so we've developed a steering committee along with our design consulting partner. And the steering committee is made up of members of the provost office, campus services and stewardship group, the facilities groups, the utilities groups, engineering, communications, our finance teams, sustainability office, as well as the planning office. And as well, we're working with all of the academic groups. We've formulated a decarbonization working group, which Julie will talk about a little bit later, to really look and as Professor Lester spoke about, how we could do this together. There's so many things that we can do and we can tap into here at MIT. As well, what are the external partners doing? What are our utility companies doing? Engaging with them. What of our peer institutions are doing about decarbonization? So our challenge is great, and our resources are great too. And so coming together and developing a pathway that's unique to MIT I think this is the challenge and this is the goal. And I know a lot of you are working on this effort. So there's a lot of work to be done, but it's exciting what MIT has in front of them. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, both Joe and Vasso. Just really quickly to just bring home the point on the integrated piece here is this past year we launched a first of its kind decarbonization working group, and which I co-chair with Christoph Reinhardt, who unfortunately is in class right now, but he's a remarkable thought partner and leader on this. But we just wanted to bring this to your attention because so many people in this room are actually involved in this. And so what we did, actually with support from folks in my office, we actually combed through, for those of you from MIT News here, we actually combed through MIT News and started to identify faculty actively working on the technologies that we knew we had to consider throughout this process. So we're actually running this both in parallel, and then we come together with the groups that Vasso just shared with you. We got funding through the Climate Nucleus to pull this group together. And we've actually done, this is just launching literally right now. We've just created these 10 different decarbonization working teams. And the key takeaway for you is not that you'll remember all these pieces. You heard about most of the things we're looking at, from geothermal to high resolution building controls, energy efficiency, microreactors, and so on. But the key here is this really unique opportunity we have, which we'll eventually bring into the climate project we just heard about, but that we're pairing faculty together with staff in this room. So if you're a staff member on one of these teams, can you just raise your hand? Yeah, we've got Renda, Steve, Wade. I was waving at you, Wade. Yeah, hey. Oh, Sichi's here. Great. Hi, Sichi. Yeah, we've got Sichi, one of the faculty members. But you get the idea that this is what's launching right now. And we have funding now, and you'll hear about one of these projects momentarily. And we've been looking to work with Sichi's group for what, Sichi? Many years with the Center for Real Estate. So this is our chance to take what we've been talking about and actually now apply it to the campus and our modeling. And then the last two quick pieces is with the funding we have, we're in the process of identifying areas to actually go and do site visits. So we're just getting up and running with this, but we really want to make sure we're understanding with the technologies that are existing or that are in the process of being developed and being tested, we can go and look for ourselves with these different constructs of faculty, staff, student groups. So stay tuned. I have had people come up to me now and say they'd like to go somewhere. I haven't created that. I'm not a travel agent at the moment, but we are interested. You know, I think we have a group going to Smith. I mean, you don't have to go far. You can go down to Providence, to Smith, or some folks will go overseas to look at some of what's happening in Europe. But it's a remarkable active model, and it's a wonderful way to bring our staff expertise together with our faculty and students. The last piece is, again, Christoph couldn't be here today, but he is launching a new seminar. And so he's taking his role with this group and will be managing this seminar, which is meeting, actually, I'm reading this right now, which is why he's not here, looking at really taking a deep dive into carbon reduction pathways for the campus. So with that said, what we wanted to do next is give you an example and bring Steve and Chenhan and Sichi, who's actually, just want to also mention one thing, Sichi's on sabbatical, by the way. So this is how committed she is to this project. So Steve and Chenhan, and then after that, we'll have you guys sit. We'll bring Joe and Vasso back up, and we'll answer some questions.
Do we have a timer? All right, yeah, green, all right. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see everybody. What's interesting is what we're going to talk about is sort of the now term. We've heard of long term, 2050, and the work to decarbonize. But there's work to be done now that we can do now that Joe highlighted, and that's really about our net zero portfolio of projects seeking to be net zero on campus by 2026. And this is an effort that's been underway for a number of years now, coming up on 3 years in terms of our internal planning effort for planning out how to get to net zero by 2026, and working collaboratively with those others that are working in this area. So to sort of continue the galactic metaphors that Richard Lester was talking about new frontiers and missions, I can say that we're not alone in terms of planning for net zero. The city of Cambridge now has passed a building performance standard, essentially, which is seeking to make all of the city's buildings that are over a certain size net zero by 2035. And so we've been able to work together and working with the city and our partners in figuring out what may be pathways that would be practical, innovative, have a high degree of accountability, and that could work well within the structures and the limitations that we have. And so they've passed an ordinance. It really requires our buildings, essentially by 2035, to be net zero. And it really identifies a number of pathways, which opens up sort of the challenge that we've reached out to our friends and colleagues across the Institute to get input on. But essentially, these strategies around decarbonizing our campus, right? Strategies are about deploying renewable energy strategically. They're about looking for investments off-site around carbon credit and approaching carbon markets. And there's also a pathway or an avenue around essentially paying the city if you are not reaching the goals that are set. And so this is a multivariate sort of optimization challenge, right? And how we're going to accomplish our goals for our own net zero planning, as well as what the city has sort of laid out for us, is a real challenge. And so how are we going to deploy these different technologies over time, in what space, and how can it be compatible with what we're doing for 2050? And so to answer sort of that question, we reached out to our friends in the MIT Center for Real Estate and with Sichi, and invited Chenhan to work with us about figuring out how to optimize that and give us a look at some of how to develop that scenario. So we've asked, we've given ample data to the group and said, how can we implement this on campus in a way that can optimize around various parameters? And so with that, I'm going to ask Chenhan to discuss how they've approached it and some of their findings are with it. And it's really a way that we've been able to go further faster. I guess we could do that slide. There we go. And I'll move it forward to yours. All right.
Okay, so thank you for the intro, Steve. In the following minute, I'm going to introduce you the dashboard that we worked during the IAP. So I'm going to introduce first the left graph. So in the left graph, we can see there are mainly 4 sources of emission reduction for MIT. We will start from the very bottom, that yellow part. This is the grid decarbonization, meaning the cuts from the decreases in emissions from the general grid, from which property owners, including MIT, can purchase their electricity from. The second part of the reduction are shown in the orange bars, which are from the renewable energy credits, known as also RECs. So these are the reduction from the renewable energy power purchasement agreements that MIT has already signed or has decided to sign. The third part of the reduction are from the blue bars. Those are the verified carbon credits. They are not allowed to use in the first phase of compliance to the BUDO, which is the ordinance that Steve just mentioned, Building Energy Use Disclosure Ordinance. So they are also capped at certain amount in each phase. So in this case, it's 20% of the total reduction in the second phase, then 40%, 20%, and 10% in the following phase, and then phase out in 2050. So the last color in that figure is green. These illustrate the gap between the reduction from the earlier 3 strategies and the required total reduction. So we have two options to close this gap. The first one is, as Steve mentioned, we can purchase alternative compliance credits from the city of Cambridge. The second one is that we can implement campus decarbonization. So in reality, we imagine a situation of a combination of both. But just for the purpose to illustrate the total cost in a clearer way, in the right graph, we display the total cost of two scenarios. Either one, that we purchase the credit from the city, or two, we implement the campus decarbonization. So for the right graph, let's just ignore the line for some seconds. The bars there are representing the cost associated with RECs in orange, verified carbon credit in blue, and also alternative compliance credit in green. So that is, the bars are the total cost of the first scenario. And the line is showing the total cost of the second scenario, which is we implement campus decarbonization and also pay for RECs and verified carbon. So with that, I'd like to ramp a little bit with that dashboard. There were some takeaways resulting from this study. The first one is there were broad uncertainties associated with policy and costs. So to kind of factor this uncertainty in this dashboard, we've built all those sliders in Dropbox on the top of this page. So viewers would be able to select the unit cost of estimated verified carbon credit, or the change in the cost of alternative compliance credit, and also how expensive it is for us to decarbonize on campus as compared to paying to the city. And there were three critical information inputs for the following decision-making process related to BUDO compliance. The first one would be the study that we just mentioned about decarbonizing the campus. So how expensive it would be and what strategies are suitable for each different buildings. And that would allow us to know which strategy to prioritize regarding whether to decarbonize on campus or pursuing other strategies. The second inputs would be the decision of the city on the calculation method for the emission factor of the general grid. So we can select different scenarios on the upper left corner, that drop box. That would allow us to know whether or how much verified carbon credit and or alternative compliance credit we should use in the second phase of compliance. The last key information would need in this process is regulations on verified carbon credit. So that is regulations in terms of the geographic limits and also project types of carbon reduction projects from which MIT and other property owners can purchase their verified carbon from. Those are critical moments for us to make decisions and move forward in the following process. And also the second piece of takeaway would be, so RECs, the renewable energy, this strategy seems to be the most feasible and least costly for us to comply with BUDO in the first phase. However, as we see that orange bar is like decreasing over time. So this means RECs are going to be more and more expensive, and the amount of reduction from RECs are decreasing over time. So we should really think this is a strategy for us to buy some time for us to figure out innovative ways to decarbonize the campus instead of being locked into this strategy. And the last piece is what we can do in the following years. So I think in terms of this model and the decision-making process, we will need much data in terms of each variable and to narrow the range of the variables specifically for each phase of compliance. And also continuously integrate the outputs from the study on campus decarbonization on the building level. So with that, I will conclude by saying that it's really a precious and unique learning opportunity for me to deepen my understanding of energy policy and implementations and its impact on property owners' behaviors. And also it's a process for me to practice how to conceptualize and visualize the decarbonization strategies for planners. Thank you so much.
I don't think Chenhan mentioned that this was done over IAP
I was just about to say
in
that.
4 weeks. And had you heard of the Building Energy Use Disclosure Ordinance before we started this project
Honestly,
in detail?
not.
So it was a
Amazing.
tremendous
Why don't you
amount
guys
of
have
work
a
in a very
seat?
short time.
All
So
right, thank you guys, yeah. We'll have Joe and Vasso come back up. It's a choose your own seat, if you will. Again, thank you, Chenhan and Steve. It's amazing how much you guys have completed in such a short period of time. Also keep in mind, related to what you heard from Richard Lester earlier, is that what Chenhan is doing is also trying to build this model with the anticipation that many other cities are going to be facing similar regulatory environments in the future. And so by building this model, it should be able to be something that gets scaled up out of MIT. So just want to get that in your head in terms of the way we're thinking about the connectivity from the campus to the world. And particularly those of you who are from resource development who may be here today. All right, we want to open it up for questions. And we've got a couple folks from my office who are going to be running mics. We've got Dawn and you. And so questions for anybody here. And I'll keep an eye open. Go ahead. We'll start here and then over to Kurt. Thank you.
Diana Gagnon, EHS. I had a professor in college who once said that a student came to him and asked, "Where can I buy the most sustainable water bottle?" To which he answered, "The most sustainable water bottle is the one you already own." And of course, we're in this brand new Sandberg Conference Center. It's beautiful. It's dazzling to think about the all-electric School of Architecture that's being built right now. The environmentally conscious design at the Schwarzman College of Computing. I'm curious if, as we work towards our goals of reducing carbon emissions, where have the conscious decisions to keep what we already have been made on campus?
I'll take that one.
Sure. So great question. I'd say that is the exact same question we get from our governance structure, from our leadership. So how do you use what you have the best? So as part of our planning process and our capital plans going forward, we are doing very intensive utilization analysis with the schools and departments that say, if you have a growing program in this area, how can we use the space you have today better to make room for what you're growing? So I think that what we're going to see over time is very little growth of the physical campus, but more of a renewal and reuse of the campus. I know there's a lot of master planning studies underway now with the School of Engineering as the School of Architecture moves into the new Met Warehouse. How can we use the vacated space the best to adapt to the new research requirements of the faculty that we're trying to attract to our campus? So our dollars are more on the space we have bucket rather than we're going to add new space. There's also some incredible programs out there, and I'll let Vasso take this one, about thinking about shared spaces. So, we have this amazing pilot that we've launched. So it's shared meeting spaces. We have about a dozen of them across the campus right now. They're fully enabled Zoom rooms. We have a scheduling app right on the phone. So departments don't have to have their own spaces. They can share spaces down the hallway. So I don't know if Vasso, if you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
I think exactly that about the shared meeting spaces. We have a pilot. We'd love to grow that pilot. It starts with the departments rethinking how space is used on campus. Like, it's not our space, not our department space, but it's MIT space. So how can we share even office space is another initiative that we were looking at, shared office space as opposed to my office. So yeah, these are things that really start with the individual and the departments and really thinking differently about MIT's space.
Great question.
Well.
Thank you. Kurt.
I'm curious, as we've gotten into this kind of next level expansion of renewable energy facilities being contracted, what's coming up in the communities where those facilities are being located? And I'm thinking about, for instance, the work of Professor Larry Susskind's renewable energy clinic, siting clinic. How's that looking? Because we see, communities kind of wrestling with what it actually looks like on the ground.
Sure. I can take a crack at that. So siting of where renewable energy projects are going to be located has been a key part of our strategy, primarily around looking at where can renewable energy capacity development actually have the biggest climate impact, right? So it's about sort of where in the country, what grids, if displacing conventional electricity with renewable energy, would have a highest and a higher greenhouse gas impact. And that's some new thinking about siting renewable projects. There is a difference from a climate impact from doing it in a clean grid in New England or in Vermont versus really looking at some of the dirtiest grids and locating them there. So that, as a sort of criterion, was an important dimension of figuring out where we're looking for where these projects are. And also going to communities that want a project like this. So avoiding communities that are seeking to put a pause on development. We're going to places that these projects are desired, where they're getting tax benefits. So there are elements that these projects are delivering tax payments essentially into these communities that are supporting schools and local budgets. And then some of the developer that we've been working with has also introduced sort of wildlife and conservation grants as part of the project, is identifying with the community on what are some of the priorities around sort of either conservation, environmental protection. And so we're really, and then sort of layer on that is also looking at, are there sort of health co-benefits in communities that can be applied? But our efforts looking primarily at the carbon, maximizing the carbon impact first, and secondly, sort of the co-benefits.
Great, thanks, Steve. And again, there's always room for follow-up during break for all of these questions because they all have a lot of depth to them. Sichi.
Yes, I have a comment and also a question. So
please.
basically for this IAP project, I learned so much from Steve and Chenhan. I only had a few Zoom meetings with them. They did all the heavy lifting work. But I learned so much because at first I saw so many new terminologies, all these certificates. Now I understood much more. So basically my understanding is that we are doing this financial analysis to calculate the cost or the avoided cost if we can decarbonize the campus in a faster way. And then we are buying some time because it's not like overnight we can decarbonize the campus in one day, but we need to take time. And also the campus is expanding. And Joe just mentioned we try to reuse and how to use the existing space, but we are still expanding in terms of the size and the activities. So that on the one hand, we decarbonize the campus. On the other hand, we are expanding, we have big missions, how to balance these two in a better way. And in the short term, we have this alternative. We have this way of this so-called this renewable energy certificate, right? We bought those certificates that buy us some time to do our on-campus decarbonization. So I think that's all the new knowledge I learned. So my question is the following. And we know that other campuses also face this challenge. BU on the other side, and the BC and the New York City, they also have local law 97. And how you are doing this with a collaboration with other universities to share knowledge, to share strategies, because something is really out of control. Like the city is great, decarbonization, all these penalties, these policy things. And what is MIT's unique strengths and how you can offer to other campuses and what you can learn from other campuses.
It's a great question, Tichi. How about we start with Joe and then Steve, add anything?
Sure.
Because these two have been on a lot of calls recently with both Boston and Cambridge universities just around this. So Joe, maybe you take that one?
So I think what we're learning is all hallmark organizations in dense urban environments understand what the issues and challenges are. There's no magic bullet to this. The first thing is the grid has got to get greener. So there's policies in place, from the Commonwealth on down federal government. There's incentive money available. So this is good, but we can start to make progress in that area. I think that the main challenge is governance of these organizations. And I think that's where people really look to MIT and they say, wow, you have a great governance process in place. You're working on the problem, governance, is involved, leadership is involved, the community is involved, what steps you're taking, we're educating each other. That doesn't happen everywhere else at other universities and campuses. And I think that's where they end up calling Julie and myself. Our phone rings from a peer colleague or an institute, like, how's MIT doing this? It really starts with the governance piece. So, how you're thinking about efficiency, how you're thinking about transitioning to electrification, how do you think about future technologies? Because if you have all those variables, no decisions get made. So if you go to your governance and say, hey, we have this great idea, we're going to do technology X, they're going to be like, wow, that's really expensive. What are the other things we looked at? Well, we didn't look at anything else. Well, did we talk to the faculty? Did we talk to our peers? Did we talk to the state? Can Eversource get us the power? So it's a multivariable process. So I think what Vasso shared is understanding the process to solve this complex problem, having the governance and the process that you can bring forward a plan that makes sense financially, but also performance-wise in terms of real carbon reduction that we know that we're going to achieve and we can measure it and validate it when we're done is important. But that's the phase that we're at right now. Vasso, did you want to say any more on that?
That's the reason why that structure slide that we shared about how many people are involved in this, it's multifaceted. There are different priorities that each individual and each box has. So how we're working together to solve that problem is just as important as the actual problem that we're trying to solve. Yeah, thanks.
Steve?
Yeah, I would just add that we're all in this. We've realized with the institutions around us that we're all in the same boat. It wouldn't be helpful to sort of row in the same direction. And having recognized that grid decarbonization is by definition regional, and that the city of Cambridge can't take it on alone, and that we have to work across the region. And so just thinking about the power purchase agreements and the investments in renewable energy, we've been managing a relationship with 11 other organizations that are working and learning and crying every week together in order to keep an aggregation together to work to find a solution that's bigger than each of us individually. And through that, that's clearly a joint learning process and something that we've all realized that everybody shouldn't be doing it from scratch.
Excellent. Great last word, Steve.
Thank you.
Excellent. I think we've run out of time for questions. Before we let these guys go, I just want to, Richard at the end of his remarks was talking about, the need to look around the corner at all times. And that is what this team and many of you in the room have done. So nothing has surprised us. We've been working, thanks to the work of Sarah and her team, and working collaboratively for so long together. We've been able to anticipate what's coming and really activate these collaborations. We didn't just start working with the city of Cambridge or the universities that you're talking about. These are long-term, long-standing relationships which are enabling us to succeed together. So I want to thank the team that's up here and all of those in the audience who are already working on this. And I hope you find the time at break, which will start now, to continue the discussion. For those of you who are managing or part of the roundtables, we also want you to come up, come find Brian. Where's Brian? So Brian wanted me to get him a jacket like this, I found out, and I only got one, so sorry about that, and this won't fit him. But look for Brian in the gray jacket over there and the bamboo marking there, and he'll come up front and come find him. So thank you again to this team, and enjoy break.